Once upon a time, in the great city of Rome, there lived two sisters named Tryphena and Tryphosa. They were not noble women, nor wealthy patrons, nor powerful rulers. They were ordinary workers who had given their lives to something extraordinary, serving Jesus Christ in the hidden corners of the empire. Their names appear only briefly in Paul's letter to the Romans, a simple greeting. Greet Tryphena and Tryphosa, those women who work hard in the Lord. But behind that greeting was a story of courage, quiet faith, and determination that helped hold together the fragile church in Rome. It was still dark when the sisters rose. The streets outside their little bakery were silent except for the faint crackle of torches at the watchposts. Inside, the ovens glowed faintly, waiting to be fed with dough that had been kneaded the night before. Tryphena tied her hair back and glanced at her sister. "Are you ready?" she asked. Tryphosa lifted the water jar to the table. "Ready," she answered. "The widows will come early. We can't let them wait." A young servant boy named Demas slipped through the door, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "The guards were restless last night," he whispered. "They're asking questions again about why this place is always busy before dawn." "Then we'll give them the same answer as always," Tryphena said firmly. "We make bread. Hungry people don't wait for the sun to rise." The boy frowned. "But they say you gather people here, that you sing hymns and whisper about another king." Tryphosa set down the jug with a thud. "If they want to call sharing bread treason, let them. But Demas, remember this. When someone asks you why we do what we do, the answer is simple. We feed the hungry." The boy nodded, though his eyes darted nervously toward the door. As the sisters worked, shaping loaves and sliding them into the oven, another knock came at the door. Phoebe, the trusted deacon from Centuriae, entered carrying a leather case. "I've just come from Paul," she whispered, her eyes bright with urgency. "I carry his words for the church in Rome." Tryphena wiped her hands on her apron. "Does he greet us?" Phoebe opened the case and unrolled the scroll carefully. "He does more than greet you. He names you. Greet Tryphena and Tryphosa, those women who work hard in the Lord." Tryphosa froze, her mouth parting in surprise. "Paul? Noticed?" "Paul notices faith," Phoebe said gently. "And so does the Lord." Before anyone could answer, the door creaked again. A man stepped in, his cloak pulled tight, his voice too loud for the quiet hour. "Busy night," he said, scanning the baskets. "Strange for bakers to work before dawn." Tryphena stepped forward calmly. "Hungry mouths wake early. Bread is honest work." "Honest work pays taxes," the man sneered, "yet I see no receipt." "I hear whispers, secret meetings, songs in the dark, talk of another king." His eyes narrowed at the case in Phoebe's hands. Tryphosa's heart raced, but her voice stayed steady. "The only kings in this room are yeast and time. They rule every loaf." The man smirked, unconvinced. He pointed to Demas. "Boy, what's in that basket?" "Bread," Demas stammered. "For whom?" "For the hungry." "Names," the man demanded. The boy froze, glancing at Tryphena. She gave him the faintest shake of her head, not fear, but wisdom. At that moment, Tertius, Paul's scribe, stepped forward. His hands were still covered in flour. "If you need names," he said, "write mine. I am Tertius, a scribe. But know this, if you take our baskets, you will not stop a meeting. You will only stop widows from eating. Is that what you want written in your report?" The man studied him, then reached for a loaf, tore it in half, and chewed slowly. "It's good," he muttered. Perhaps too good for rebels. He turned toward the door. I will return. If I hear singing, I'll bring soldiers. When he left, no one moved for several long breaths. Then Tryphena straightened her shoulders. We deliver the bread anyway. Rome may not understand us, but the hungry do. And Paul's words are clear. We must keep working in the Lord. Tryphosa tied a basket closed and handed it to Demas. Go quickly. Use the back lanes. And remember, if anyone asks who we are. Bakers, Demas whispered. Nothing more, Tryphena finished. The boy slipped out into the shadows. The sisters exchanged a look, steady, unafraid. Outside, the city of Rome stirred awake, dangerous and unpredictable. Inside, the sisters pressed on, their work simple, hidden, and holy. But the man's warning lingered like smoke in the air. He would return, and next time he would not come alone. The sisters worked quickly after the man left, their hands steady though their hearts still raced. Tryphena kneaded dough with sharp, efficient movements, while Tryphosa tied closed another basket. The air smelled of bread, but beneath it hung the weight of the man's warning. He'll be back, Demas whispered as he returned from the alley, empty-handed. I heard him speaking to a soldier at the corner. He wasn't joking. Tryphosa pressed the boy's shoulder gently. That's why we must be faster than his suspicion. Did the widows receive their bread? Yes, Demas said. They blessed you both. But they warned too. Soldiers are asking about meetings again. Tryphena glanced at Phoebe, who still held Paul's letter hidden beneath her cloak. The letter must not be found. If they discover it, they'll accuse us of treason. Phoebe nodded. Paul's words are not just greetings. They're instructions, warnings, encouragements. Rome must hear them. Tertius, standing at the oven, spoke up quietly. If the man returns with soldiers, they'll search everything. The baskets, the ovens, even the sacks of flour. We need a plan. Tryphosa wiped her hands. Then we split the risk. Half the baskets go one way, half another. If one is caught, the other reaches the church. And the letter? Phoebe asked. Tryphena looked at her sister. We'll carry it ourselves. No one suspects women of carrying dangerous words, Demas frowned. But they suspect bakers. Tryphosa gave a small smile. Then we'll bake faster. The door creaked again. Everyone froze, hearts pounding. But it was only a neighbor, a thin woman with 2 children clinging to her skirt. Sisters, she said, her voice low and desperate, do you have anything to spare? My husband hasn't found work for weeks. Tryphena immediately handed her a loaf. Take this, and come back tomorrow at dawn. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Why do you risk this? If the guard discovers you, they'll seize everything. Tryphosa knelt down, looking into the children's hungry faces, because bread is life, and life is worth the risk. The woman left quickly, clutching the loaf like treasure. Phoebe whispered, Paul was right to greet you by name. He knew your work was dangerous, but he also knew it was faithful. Tryphena gave a short laugh, though her eyes were hard. Danger follows everyone in Rome. We might as well face it doing something that matters. Hours passed. The baskets filled. The oven roared. Dawn crept closer. And just as the first hint of light touched the city, the sound of boots echoed in the street. Soldiers, Demas hissed, peering through the crack in the door. 3 of them, and that man with the cloak. Tryphosa grabbed the scroll from Phoebe and shoved it into a hollow beam above the oven. If they search, they won't think to look where it's hottest. The door burst open. The man strode in with 2 soldiers at his back. "I told you I would return," he said. "And here you are, still baking, still whispering. What are you hiding?" Tryphena met his gaze without flinching. "Bread. That's all we have to hide." The man sneered. "Search everything." The soldiers overturned baskets, scattered flour, and pulled loaves from the oven. One soldier tore a loaf in half and tossed it aside. "Only bread, sir." "Look harder," the man snapped. "There are letters here." I heard the name of Paul spoken. At that, Tertius stepped forward. "I am a scribe. I write letters. Is it a crime to put ink on parchment?" The man glared. "If the ink speaks of rebellion, yes." Tryphosa spoke quickly. "What rebellion do you fear from bakers and widows?" "Bread is no weapon." The man turned on her. "You mock me again." He pointed at the soldiers. "Bring the boy." Demas tried to slip away, but a soldier seized him. The boy struggled, eyes wide with fear. "I only carry bread," he cried. Tryphena stepped between them. "Let him go." "He's a child." The man's eyes narrowed. "Children carry messages. Children slip through alleys. Children do not draw suspicion. He knows where you meet." Phoebe's hands clenched at her sides. "You accuse a boy of treason? Rome must be desperate indeed." The man ignored her and leaned closer to Tryphena. "Tell me where the letter is, or the boy suffers for your silence." The room froze. Tryphena's heart pounded. The hidden scroll above the oven felt like fire in the rafters. At last she spoke, her voice steady but quiet. "We do not betray our family. Not for fear, not for threats. If you must harm someone, harm me." The man studied her, his jaw tight. Then he barked a command. "Enough! Leave the boy." He turned to the sisters. "You will slip sooner or later, and when you do, I will be waiting." The soldiers released Demas. The boy stumbled back into Phoebe's arms. Without another word, the man swept out into the dawn, his cloak trailing like a shadow. For a long moment, no one spoke. The smell of burnt bread lingered from the loaves tossed to the floor. Then Tryphosa exhaled slowly. "They will be back again." Tryphena reached up, pulled the scroll from its hiding place, and held it to her chest. "Then we must deliver this before they find it. Paul's words must reach the church, whatever it costs." Phoebe nodded. "And the church must hear about you. Tryphena and Tryphosa, those who work hard in the Lord." The sisters exchanged a look. They had no weapons, no wealth, no power, but they had each other, and they had their work. Outside, Rome awakened. Markets opening, soldiers marching, rumors stirring. Inside, the sisters prepared for another day of quiet defiance, carrying baskets of bread and a hidden letter that could change lives, but the man's warning still echoed in their minds. Next time, he would not leave with threats alone. The city of Rome had fully awakened by the time Tryphena and Tryphosa stepped into the streets with their baskets. The smell of smoke from morning cook fires mingled with the stink of open drains. Market stalls clattered open. Soldiers marched past in tight rows. Rome looked alive, but to the sisters every street felt like a net closing in. Somewhere out there, the man with the cloak was watching. Tryphena adjusted the strap of her basket and whispered, "Keep your eyes down." Bread sellers draw no suspicion if they look busy. Tryphosa nodded. But what about the letter? She glanced at the scroll wrapped in cloth and tucked beneath a loaf. If they stop us, then they'll find bread, Tryphena cut in firmly. Nothing more. Bread hides many things. Tertius walked a step behind them, cloak pulled low. I don't like this, he muttered. Every alley feels like a trap. Phoebe, steady as ever, replied, Every city feels like a trap when the gospel moves inside it. Keep walking. At the corner of the Subura district, a beggar reached for them, his hand trembling. Bread, sisters, please! He rasped. His eyes were sunken, his ribs sharp beneath his tunic. Without hesitation, Tryphosa slipped him a piece from the top of her basket. Eat quickly. And pray for us. The man devoured it and whispered, The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you safe. Tertius shook his head. Even the beggars know you. Good, Tryphena said under her breath. If the church forgets our names, let the hungry remember. They turned down a narrow lane, the stones slick with morning rain. Suddenly a voice called out sharp and mocking, Bakers! Out so early? It was the man with the cloak leaning against a wall. Two soldiers flanked him. Tryphosa's heart thudded. Keep walking, she whispered. But the man stepped forward, blocking the lane. I warned you, didn't I? That you'd slip. And here you are, baskets full, eyes nervous. Where are you taking all this bread? Tryphena forced a calm smile. To the market. Same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. The man's gaze flicked to the baskets. Bread for the market? Or for your secret meetings? He reached out as if to lift a loaf. Before he could, a voice rang out from behind. Excuse me, sir! A fruit vendor shouted from his stall. Don't touch that bread, it's theirs. They've supplied my mother for years. The soldiers turned their heads. The distraction gave Tryphena just enough time to step past, pulling her sister with her. Phoebe and Tertius followed quickly. The man snarled, This city will not protect you forever. Tryphosa whispered fiercely, Then we will protect each other. At last they reached a courtyard hidden between tall houses. Believers gathered there quietly, pretending to be tradesmen arranging goods. A woman hurried forward as the sisters entered. You made it, she said, eyes darting to the baskets. We feared the guards would stop you. Almost did, Tryphena muttered. She set the basket on the table, pulled out the wrapped cloth, and placed the scroll in the woman's hands. Paul's words. Guard them well. The woman's eyes filled with tears. We will read them tonight in whispers. His voice will strengthen us. Phoebe added, and he greets these sisters by name. Tryphena and Tryphosa, who work hard in the Lord. The courtyard fell quiet. Every eye turned to the two women, flour still clinging to their clothes, hair damp from rain. Tryphosa shifted uncomfortably. We don't do much. We only bake and carry bread. An elder in the group spoke. Bread is life. And so is the word. You carry both. Without you, many would starve in body and spirit. The word sank into the sisters' hearts like fire. But the peace did not last. A child ran into the courtyard breathless. Soldiers, he cried. They're coming this way. Panic rippled through the group. Believers scrambled to hide baskets and tools. Tryphena grabbed her sister's arm. We can't run. They'll search the courtyard. If they find the letter. Tryphosa finished her thought. The church is finished. Her eyes flicked to the scroll in the elder's hands. Without hesitation, she snatched it back, unwrapped it, and shoved it beneath her tunic. Tryphena hissed, "Sister, what are you doing?" "If they search, they'll search the room, not us," Tryphosa whispered. "They'll think we're only bakers." "They always underestimate women." The sound of boots grew louder outside the gate. The man's voice carried over the noise. "Search every corner." "I know they're hiding something." Phoebe's face hardened. "Be ready." The gate rattled as the soldiers forced it open, the courtyard filled with shadows and the clatter of armor. The man stepped in first, eyes scanning, smirk curling. And Tryphosa stood still in the center, the hidden letter pressed against her heart, praying silently that no hand would reach for her. The courtyard gates clanged open with a metallic groan that seemed to echo off every wall. The small group of believers froze where they stood. Tryphosa felt her heartbeat in her throat as soldiers poured in, their sandals striking the stones in harsh rhythm. The man in the cloak entered last, slow and smug, as though the courtyard already belonged to him. "Spread out," he ordered. "Search everything. These bakers hide more than flour." The soldiers moved like wolves through the flock. One overturned baskets, scattering bread across the ground. Another kicked over a clay jar, water spilling into the dust. The courtyard filled with the crash of pottery, the scrape of swords against wood, the frightened gasps of believers trying not to speak. Tryphosa stood still in the center, the scroll pressed under her tunic, its rough parchment sharp against her ribs. She whispered a silent prayer, her lips barely moving. "Lord, hide your word in me. Hide it where no soldier's hand can reach." Tryphena edged closer to her sister, whispering without moving her lips. "Are you sure you can hold steady? They may search bodies." "If they do," Tryphosa whispered back, "we'll find another way. But right now, no one suspects us. Stay calm." The man's eyes darted across the courtyard, sharp and suspicious. "Where is it?" he demanded. "You think I don't know about Paul's letters? You think I don't know he writes to you, warns you, strengthens you? Where is it?" A soldier yanked open a chest, pulling out blankets. Another upturned a sack of barley. The elder who had received the scroll clenched his fists, trying to remain composed. The man's gaze landed on Phoebe. You're from Century. You carry letters for him, don't you?" Phoebe met his eyes, calm but firm. "I carry what is given to me. Right now, I carry nothing but a basket of bread." The man smirked. "We'll see about that." He gestured and a soldier grabbed Phoebe's cloak, shaking it out. Loaves tumbled onto the ground. Nothing else. Phoebe bent down, calmly gathered the loaves, and placed them back in the basket. "As I said, bread." The man's lips curled in frustration. He spun toward Tryphena and Tryphosa. "And what about you two? Always so busy, always so early. What do you hide beneath your aprons? Step forward." Tryphena felt her stomach twist. She stepped slightly in front of Tryphosa. "We hide nothing. We knead, we bake, we carry. That is all." The man studied her face, searching for cracks. "I don't believe you." He nodded at a soldier. "Search them." The soldier approached. Tryphena's breath caught. She braced herself, ready to fight, ready to stall, ready to do anything to protect the letter pressed against her sister's chest. But before the soldier reached them, Demas, the young servant boy, suddenly darted across the courtyard. He stumbled into the soldier, knocking him sideways. "Please, sir," Demas cried, "don't hurt them." "It's my fault. I was supposed to deliver the baskets earlier. If anyone is hiding something, it's me." The soldier shoved the boy to the ground. "Out of the way, rat!" But the distraction was enough. Tryphosa had steadied herself again, her face composed, her hands gripping the basket straps like any ordinary worker. The man in the cloak sneered, "You people are clever. You hide your words as if they were weapons, but we'll find them." He stepped close to Tryphosa, his eyes narrowing. "Tell me, girl, what do you carry in your heart that makes you so bold?" Tryphosa held his gaze, her voice steady. "Hope." For a long moment the courtyard was silent. The man studied her as if trying to peel back her soul. Then he stepped back with a hiss. "Enough. We'll be back. And next time, if I find even a scrap of parchment, you'll all answer for it." With a sharp gesture, he signaled the soldiers. They marched out, boots striking hard against the stones. The gates slammed shut behind them. Only then did everyone breathe. The elder sank to his knees, trembling. Phoebe put a hand on Demas's shoulder, helping him up. Tryphena clutched her sister's arm. "You could have been caught," she whispered fiercely. "I wasn't," Tryphosa said simply, "because God hid his word." She pulled the scroll from beneath her tunic and held it high. "His message lives." The courtyard filled with quiet sobs of relief, with whispered prayers of thanksgiving. But in every heart, one truth burned. The danger had not passed. It had only deepened. Tryphena looked at the believers, at her sister, at the hidden letter, now safe for another night. "We cannot wait," she said. "Paul's words must be copied and scattered before they return. If one copy is taken, others must survive." Phoebe nodded. "Then we work tonight. The church in Rome will not be silenced." The sisters exchanged a look, weary but determined. They knew the man in the cloak would not rest, but neither would they. And somewhere, in the shadows of Rome, plans were already forming to destroy them. Night fell heavy over Rome, the city's noise dimming to the occasional rattle of a cartwheel or the drunk laughter of men stumbling home. In a small upper room above the bakery, a single oil lamp flickered, casting shadows across the walls. Around a wooden table sat Tryphena, Tryphosa, Phoebe, Tertius, and two elders from the church. In the center lay Paul's scroll, still smelling faintly of flour from its hiding place. "We can't keep it whole," Phoebe whispered. "If soldiers find it, it will be lost. We must copy it quickly and send pieces across the city." Tertius unrolled the parchment with practiced care, his ink-stained fingers trembling slightly. "I know Paul's hand. I know the curves of his words. But to copy by night, with little light—" "Then we take turns," Tryphena said firmly. "One writes, another watches the door, another grinds ink. We work until it's done." Tryphosa leaned forward, her voice low but steady. "If we're caught, we'll be accused of rebellion. Are we prepared for that?" The room fell silent for a moment. Finally, Phoebe spoke. "Rebellion against Rome, no. But rebellion against sin, against fear, against silence, yes. That is what we're guilty of, and that is what we must continue to do." Tertius dipped his reed into ink and began to write on a clean sheet of parchment. The scratch of pen against fiber filled the room, rhythmic and steady. Tryphena read aloud, softly, as he copied, "Greet Tryphena and Tryphosa, those women who work hard in the Lord." Her voice caught slightly. "There. Paul himself has sealed our work with honor." Tryphosa smiled faintly. "Then let us prove him right." She stood and went to the door. listening for any sound from the street below. Hours passed. The lamp guttered. Sweat gathered on Tertius's brow as he worked, his hand cramping but refusing to stop. Phoebe read each line aloud, double-checking for errors. Tryphena ground more ink in a small bowl, her arms aching but steady. Tryphosa returned from the door often, whispering updates. 2 soldiers passed by, she said once, but they did not stop. Later, the dogs barked down the lane. Someone's watching, and once more, with urgency. The man with the cloak! I saw him near the market. He asked a vendor if she'd seen us. The room stiffened each time, but the work never stopped. Line by line, the letter grew on the fresh parchment. Near midnight, Demas crept up the stairs, breathless. "They're searching houses 2 streets away," he whispered. "They knock on doors and demand to look inside. They say they're hunting rebels." Phoebe looked at the scroll. "Then we are running out of time." Tryphena took the fresh copy from Tertius's hands. "How many more pages?" 3, he said, his voice strained. "Then we copy until dawn," she replied. Tryphosa knelt beside Demas, steadying his shaking hands. "Listen carefully, boy. When the copies are finished, you must carry one to Priscilla's house, another to Aquila's workshop, another to the believers across the Tiber. Do you understand?" Demas swallowed hard. "If they catch me—" "They won't," she interrupted, "because you will walk, not run. Walk like a boy carrying bread, nothing more. Remember that." The boy nodded, though his eyes were wide with fear. At last, the work was done. Several small scrolls lay on the table, each rolled tight, wrapped in cloth, and tucked into baskets of bread. The original parchment, Paul's very hand, was wrapped more carefully and slid into a clay jar. Tertius exhaled in relief. "It is finished." Phoebe shook her head. "No, it has only begun." Suddenly, a loud knock thundered at the door below. Everyone froze. Another knock, louder this time. "Open!" a voice shouted. "By order of the guard!" Demas whimpered. Tryphosa pressed a hand over his mouth. Tryphena grabbed one of the baskets, shoving a scroll deep inside. The knocks became pounding fists. The door rattled. "They'll break it down," Tertius whispered. Phoebe blew out the lamp. The room plunged into darkness. Only the sound of frantic breathing filled the space. Tryphena leaned close to her sister and whispered, "If they come up here, we scatter. Hide the scrolls with your life. Promise me." "I promise," Tryphosa whispered back. The pounding continued below. And then, silence. Boots shuffled. A low voice spoke on the street. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. Everyone stayed frozen for what felt like hours. Finally, Demas whispered, "They're gone." But Tryphosa shook her head. "No, they'll be back. That was only a warning." Tryphena held the clay jar close to her chest, heart pounding. "Then tomorrow we deliver. No more waiting. Paul's words must run faster than Rome's shadow." The sisters looked at each other, unspoken courage passing between them, because they knew the shadow at their door would return, and next time it would not leave without blood. Dawn broke over Rome like a thief, gray and restless. The streets stirred with carts creaking over cobblestones, vendors setting up stalls, and watchmen changing shifts. But for Tryphena and Tryphosa, this was no ordinary morning. Each basket they carried was heavier than it looked, not because of the loaves of bread, but because of the fragile scrolls hidden inside. "Walk steady," Tryphena whispered as they stepped into the alley. "We are bakers." Nothing more. Demas trotted beside them, his own small basket slung across his shoulder. "What if they stop me?" he asked. "They won't," Tryphosa said gently. "You look like any boy on an errand. If they ask, say you carry bread for your grandmother." Phoebe and Tertius followed at a short distance, each holding a basket. 5 baskets, 5 roots, 5 chances for Paul's letter to survive. The plan was simple. The sisters would split the scrolls, delivering them to trusted believers across the city. If one of them was caught, the others might still reach their destination. But nothing in Rome was truly simple. At the first street corner, a soldier leaned lazily against a pillar, watching the morning traffic. His eyes swept over the sisters as they approached. "Early, aren't you?" he muttered, stepping into their path. Tryphena smiled faintly, lifting her basket. "Hungry mouths wake early, and bread doesn't bake itself." The soldier smirked, reaching toward the basket. "Let me see. Perhaps I'm hungry too." Tryphosa's heart pounded. If he reached beneath the loaves, but just then, an old woman with a bent back and a cane shuffled past, calling out, "Bakers! Bakers! Do you have the round loaves my daughter likes?" She waved a coin in the air. The soldier chuckled, stepping aside. "Go on then. Your customers are waiting." Tryphena quickly pressed a loaf into the old woman's hands, whispering, "Bless you," as they slipped away. Only when they turned the corner did Tryphosa let out a shaky breath. That was too close. "Close," Tryphena murmured. "Is still not caught." They reached the first safe house, a weaver's shop with bright cloth hanging in the windows. Inside, a man greeted them quietly, eyes darting to the basket. "The letter?" he asked. Tryphosa nodded and slid a small scroll beneath the folded cloth. "Read it in whispers. Copy it by night. Hide it well." The man pressed her hands. "Your names will not be forgotten." "No names," Tryphena corrected softly. "Only Christ's." They left quickly, merging back into the flow of the street. As they neared the Tiber River, the sound of marching boots echoed ahead. A patrol of soldiers was stopping passers-by, questioning them one by one. The sisters froze in the shadows of a doorway. "If they search the baskets, it's over," Tryphosa whispered. Phoebe stepped forward, her face calm. "Then I'll walk first. They expect me to carry messages. If they stop me, you slip past." "No," Tryphena said firmly. "If they take you, the church loses its strongest voice. We cannot risk it." Tertius spoke up. "Then let me go. I am only a scribe. To them ink is harmless." But before any of them could move, Demas tugged at Tryphosa's sleeve. "Let me go," he whispered. "I'm just a boy. Who would suspect me?" Tryphosa knelt, cupping his face. "Because boys slip through alleys and carry more than bread. They know this. They will search you." The patrol drew closer. The sisters had seconds to decide. Tryphena lifted her basket high and whispered, "Follow me." Eyes down. "We are bakers. Nothing more." They stepped out into the street, just as the soldiers turned. "You there!" the captain barked. "Stop!" Tryphena froze, clutching the basket. The scroll hidden beneath the bread felt like fire against her palms. The captain eyed her suspiciously. "What do you carry?" "Bread," Tryphena said, steady though her pulse raced. "Bread for whom?" "For anyone with a coin," she replied. The captain's hand hovered near her basket. Then one of his men laughed. "They're only women," Bakers. We waste time." The captain grunted, waved them off, and turned to the next group. The sisters walked on, steady steps hiding trembling hearts. Only when they were out of sight did Tryphosa whisper, "God himself blinded their eyes." By midday, the last scroll had been delivered. One to the weaver, one to the potter's courtyard, one to the believers by the river, one to Priscilla and Aquila's house. The final copy remained in Tryphosa's basket, destined for the elder who led the gatherings in the catacombs. As they descended the worn stone steps into the underground chambers, the air grew cool and damp. Oil lamps flickered against the walls. Believers sat huddled in silence, waiting. Tryphosa placed the scroll in the elder's hands. "Paul's words are here. Guard them with your life." The elder's eyes shone with tears. Many risked much for this. You may not see the fruit now, but generations will. Tryphena and Tryphosa exchanged a look, tired but steady. They had carried the words through the streets of Rome, through shadows and suspicion. The letter was safe, for now. But as they turned to leave, Demas rushed into the chamber, breathless and pale. "They followed us," he gasped. "The man in the cloak." "He knows. Soldiers are coming." The lamps flickered as panic swept the room. The sisters stood frozen, hearts pounding, baskets suddenly feeling far too light. The scrolls were scattered now, hidden in houses across the city, but if the soldiers reached this place, the believers themselves would be in danger. Tryphosa grabbed her sister's hand. "We can't run." Tryphena nodded. "Then we stand." Above them, the sound of boots echoed on the stone steps. The damp air of the catacombs pressed against every breath as the believers huddled in silence, the flicker of oil lamps casting uneasy shadows on the carved stone walls. Tryphena and Tryphosa stood near the entrance chamber, their baskets still in their hands, though now nearly empty of bread. Around them, men and women crouched low, clutching children close, whispering hurried prayers into the darkness. In the elder's hands rested the final scroll, rolled tightly and hidden beneath his cloak, the weight of Paul's words heavier than gold. The sisters exchanged a glance, neither speaking, for there was nothing left to say. They both understood the danger. Above them, muffled but unmistakable, came the sound of boots striking stone in sharp rhythm. The soldiers were descending. Tryphena tightened her grip on the basket strap until her knuckles whitened. She thought of all the houses across Rome where fragments of Paul's letter now lay hidden, in jars of grain, beneath woven cloth, tucked under beds of straw. Those copies might survive even if this group did not. Yet that thought brought little comfort. These were their people, their family in Christ, and the soldiers would not be merciful if they found them gathered in secret. Beside her, Tryphosa pressed her hand against the wall, steadying herself as her heart pounded. She whispered low, barely moving her lips, "If they see the scroll, it's over." Tryphena answered with the same quiet breath, "Then they must not see it. Whatever it takes." The boots drew nearer, the echoes bouncing louder through the narrow stairwell. Suddenly, the pounding stopped. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating, as though the soldiers waited just beyond the final bend, listening for any sound below. The believers froze, terrified even of their own breathing. A baby whimpered, the tiny sound impossibly loud in the stillness. A mother quickly pressed the child to her chest, rocking in frantic silence. Tryphosa stepped forward instinctively, placing herself between the soldiers' path and the gathered families, her face pale but her voice firm as she whispered to the elder, "Hide yourself deeper." If they come, we will draw them away. The elder shook his head, his jaw set. I cannot abandon my people. But Tryphena touched his arm, her eyes fierce. If you are taken, the church is scattered. If we are taken, the work continues. You must live to read Paul's words. Reluctantly, he nodded and slipped into a narrow passage, vanishing into the dark with the scroll pressed tight to his chest. The silence shattered with the sound of steel against stone as the soldiers struck their spears against the stairwell walls. Then came the man's voice, sharp and mocking, echoing downward. I know you're here. You think you can hide forever in graves and shadows? You think your letters will outlast Rome? His words slithered down into the chamber, pulling fear into every heart. A soldier's torchlight flared at the corner of the stairwell, its glow stretching long across the floor. Tryphosa drew a sharp breath and clutched her sister's arm. Tryphena whispered back, steady, now we decide. Do we flee or do we stand? Her sister's answer came without hesitation. We stand. The first soldier stepped into the chamber, his torch casting the small room into sudden brightness. The believers shrank back, shielding their eyes, some pulling further into the tunnels. The man in the cloak followed, his smug smile illuminated by the flame. His eyes swept the room quickly, landing on the sisters, then narrowing as he spoke. So, the bakers again. Always the bakers. Always early. Always busy, always too quiet when the guard comes near. Tell me, where is the letter? He stepped closer, his boots grinding against loose stones, his gaze flicking between the two women. Paul writes, I know it, and you carry his words. Where are they? Tryphosa felt the weight of every eye on her, waiting for her answer. She forced her face calm, her voice level. We carry only bread. Rome can search us as many times as it likes. All it will find is loaves. The man's smile widened. Bread that feeds rebels? Bread that hides lies about another king? He gestured to the soldiers. Search them. Two men stepped forward, one reaching for Tryphosa, the other for her sister. Tryphena acted quickly, thrusting her basket forward so sharply that loaves spilled across the floor. Here, she snapped, her tone bold and defiant. Take it. All of it. Search until you are satisfied. The soldiers bent to gather the scattered loaves, breaking them apart, tossing crumbs aside. Their hands were rough, careless. But in that chaos, something unexpected happened. A child, no older than 5, crawled forward from the shadows and picked up a torn piece of bread. He bit into it hungrily, his small face breaking into a smile despite the fear around him. The sight was so ordinary, so disarming, that even the soldiers paused, watching the child eat as though suddenly reminded of their own children at home. For a moment, the room was still again. The man in the cloak broke the silence with a hiss. Enough games. If the letter is here, I will find it. He shoved past the soldiers, storming toward the narrow passage where the elder had disappeared. Tryphena moved fast, stepping directly into his path, her voice rising louder than she had ever dared before. Stop! She cried. The shout startled the room, echoing off the stone. If you want parchment so badly, then search me first. Tear my cloak, rip my tunic, dig through my basket, but you will not touch that passage. The man stopped, his eyes narrowing, his face twisting in suspicion. The room held its breath. Tryphosa stepped forward beside her sister, her chin lifted high. You search us every time. You accuse us every time. And every time you find nothing but bread, how many loaves must we spill before you see the truth? We are bakers, nothing more. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. One muttered under his breath, They're only women. Another added, "We've searched enough. There's nothing here but bread and dust." The man turned sharply on them, his eyes flashing. "Fools! You'll regret your blindness when Rome falls to whispers." Yet even as he spat the words, he knew the moment was slipping. The soldiers were weary of the chase, weary of overturning baskets only to find bread, weary of being mocked by shadows. Finally, with a furious glare at the sisters, the man pulled back. "You think you're clever. But I see you. I will watch you. And when you stumble, I will be there." With a sharp gesture, he ordered the soldiers out. Their boots pounded up the steps, the torchlight fading as quickly as it had come. The gate above slammed shut, leaving the chamber in darkness again. For a long moment no one moved. The only sound was the faint drip of water down the stone walls. Then at last, Tryphena exhaled, her knees trembling, and whispered, "They are not finished with us." Tryphosa placed her hand over her sister's, her voice low but resolute. "Neither are we finished with them." In the shadows, the elder emerged again, the scroll still pressed tight against his chest. His voice shook, but his words were clear. "The Lord hid his word tonight. He hid it in you." The believers bowed their heads, offering thanks in whispers, and the sisters, weary but unbroken, stood together in the dim light, knowing the danger was far from over. But so was their work. The night after the search in the catacombs, the sisters did not sleep. Neither did anyone else. Fear lingered in the shadows of the bakery like smoke that refused to clear, yet so did determination. If the soldiers were hunting Paul's words, then those words had to move faster than the soldiers could. Tryphena sat at the table grinding fresh ink with steady hands, while Tertius bent once again over parchment, his fingers stained black, his eyes aching with exhaustion. Tryphosa moved between them, preparing bread, hiding fragments of copied scrolls inside the warm loaves, then setting them aside in baskets. "Every copy we make is a spark," she whispered. "If they crush one, the others will still burn." By dawn, the plan was set. Each believer would take one scroll or fragment disguised in a basket or jar and deliver it to another part of the city. No one carried more than one, so no single capture could ruin them all. Tryphena and Tryphosa volunteered for the most dangerous routes, the markets near the forum where guards were thickest, and the narrow lanes near the barracks where suspicion was sharpest. "They already watch us," Tryphena said calmly. "Better they watch us than someone else." Phoebe tried to protest, but Tryphosa silenced her with a steady look. "This is what we were named for, to work hard in the Lord. Let us do it." The streets of Rome were restless that day. Rumors spread faster than bread, whispers of rebellion, of secret gatherings, of strange letters passing hand to hand. The man in the cloak had stirred suspicion like a storm, and the soldiers listened eagerly. At the forum, soldiers stopped carts, overturning goods, looking for hidden messages. At the river, fishermen were questioned, their nets searched. Even children were stopped, their baskets rifled through by rough hands. Rome felt smaller with every step, its walls closing in, its shadows crawling with eyes. Tryphena moved steadily through the crowd, her basket heavy on her arm. Inside, beneath 3 round loaves, lay a small scroll wrapped tight in cloth. She forced herself to breathe evenly, to smile at passers-by, to speak to vendors like any other baker. A soldier stopped her at the edge of the forum. "What's in the basket?" he barked. "Bread for the market," she replied evenly, lifting the top loaf so he could see the crust. "The stalls sell fast this time of day." The soldier tore a piece from the loaf, chewed, and shrugged. "Go on, then." Only when she was past him did Tryphena allow her knees to weaken for a moment. She ducked into a narrow alley and knocked softly on a painted door. It opened just enough for a hand to reach out, trembling but eager. She slid the scroll into it and whispered, "Read quietly. Copy quickly. Hide it well." The hand squeezed hers once before the door shut again. Another spark set free. Meanwhile, Tryphosa made her way toward the barracks district, where suspicion was sharpest. She carried her basket low, her head bowed, blending into the flow of vendors. Twice she was stopped, twice her bread was inspected, and twice the soldiers found nothing but loaves. When she reached a small workshop where believers met in secret, she slipped inside and placed the hidden scroll into the hands of a widow waiting by the hearth. "Guard it with your life," Tryphosa said. The widow nodded, her eyes wet with gratitude. Back at the bakery, Phoebe and Tertius oversaw the scattering of other copies. One hidden in a jar of olives sent to the other side of the river, another tucked inside a roll of cloth delivered to a weaver, another hidden in a basket of figs carried by a servant girl. By midday, Paul's words had crossed half the city, multiplying like seeds scattered in the wind. But shadows followed close behind. The man in the cloak prowled the markets, whispering to soldiers, his eyes searching every face. He questioned vendors, bribed beggars, threatened children. Twice he asked about the sisters by name. "Two women," he said, "twin voices, always with bread. Always too quiet when Rome comes near. Watch them." His suspicion grew like fire, but he had no proof, not yet. That evening, as the sisters returned to the bakery, weary but unbroken, Demas came running down the street, breathless and pale. "They know," he gasped. "The man with the cloak, he told the captain you carry letters in your bread." "Soldiers are coming tonight." Tryphena closed the bakery door firmly and looked at her sister. "Then we prepare." Tryphosa nodded. "If they search again, they will find nothing. Every scroll is already gone." Phoebe, calm but fierce, added, "But they won't stop with bread this time. They will want names. They will want to break us." For a long moment the sisters stood in silence, listening to the distant tramp of boots in the streets. Finally, Tryphena spoke, her voice low but unwavering. "Then if they come, let them come. We will not betray the church. We will not betray the word. If Rome wants bread, Rome will have bread. But they will not have Paul's letter." The room fell into tense silence as the sound of soldiers grew louder outside, their torches flickering against the night sky. The believers huddled close, every heart pounding, every breath waiting for what would happen next. And then came the pounding at the bakery door. "Open! By order of the guard." The sisters exchanged one last glance, steady and fearless. Tryphosa whispered, "If they mean to break us, they will find we do not break easily." Tryphena laid her hand on the latch, the fire of determination in her eyes. "Then tonight, Rome will learn what two women with nothing but bread can do." The pounding grew louder. The bakery door shuddered under the blows, and as the latch lifted, every soul inside the small room braced for what was to come. The pounding on the bakery door grew harder, rattling the wooden beams. Every believer in the room froze where they stood. The smell of baked bread still hung in the air, but fear was sharper now, pressing down on them like a weight. Tryphena placed her hand on the latch, her eyes steady. Beside her, Tryphosa lifted her chin, her basket still slung over her arm, though it was empty of scrolls. "Open! By order of Rome!" The voice bellowed again. Tryphena glanced once at her sister, and in that wordless look they agreed. They would open the door, but they would not give away a single soul inside. She lifted the latch. The door burst inward, soldiers flooding the bakery, their torches spitting sparks. Behind them came the man in the cloak, his smile sharp and cruel, his eyes glittering as he scanned the room. "Ah," he said smoothly, "the famous bakers of Rome. Did you think I would not return?" Tryphosa stepped forward, her voice calm though her hands trembled. "You return often, sir, but always you find only bread. Bread does not conspire. Bread does not rebel." The man's smile widened. "Bread does not write letters either. And yet Rome whispers that Paul's words travel your streets. Where are they?" The soldiers moved quickly, overturning baskets, scattering flour across the floor, tearing open sacks of grain. Loaves hit the ground and rolled across the stones. One soldier thrust his hand into the oven, pulling out nothing but embers and ashes. Another struck the wall beam, searching for hidden compartments, but all they found was bread. The man in the cloak paced slowly, his gaze fixed on the sisters. "You hide it well," he said softly. "Too well. Which means you are guilty. And guilty tongues eventually break." He stepped close to Tryphena, his face inches from hers. "Tell me where the letters are, and I will leave this place in peace. Refuse, and I will drag you through the streets until you speak." Tryphena's heart thundered, but her eyes did not waver. "You may drag me," she said quietly, "but you will not hear what you seek, because there is nothing here." The man's face twisted with irritation. He turned sharply to the soldiers. "Seize the boy!" Demas cried out as two soldiers grabbed him, yanking him forward. The believers gasped, some reaching out instinctively but too afraid to act. The man in the cloak looked back at the sisters. "Children break faster than women. Shall we test it?" Tryphosa moved quickly, stepping in front of Demas, shielding him with her own body. "He is nothing but a boy. He carries bread, not rebellion. If you harm him, you will have to step through us first." The man's eyes gleamed. "So quick to protect him. So quick to prove your guilt." Phoebe suddenly spoke from the corner, her voice sharp and commanding. "If it is names you want, then write mine. I carry the church's burdens, but if you harm these sisters, you will only prove what Rome truly fears, not swords, not rebellion, but women with faith that cannot be broken." The man's face hardened. He turned back to Tryphena and Tryphosa. "This is your last chance. Tell me where the scrolls are. Where do you hide Paul's words?" The sisters looked at each other. Tryphena lifted her chin. Tryphosa spoke first, her voice ringing clear. "We do not hide them. They are already gone." The man froze, his smile faltering. "Gone?" Tryphena nodded, her words calm but fierce. "By the time you stormed our door, Paul's words had already walked these streets in baskets, in jars, in hands that looked too ordinary for you to notice. You cannot catch them now. They are already free." For the first time, the man's mask cracked. His face twisted in anger, his hands curling into fists. He shoved the soldiers toward the door. "Search the neighbors. Search every alley. Tear this quarter apart if you must." The soldiers hesitated, weary of overturning the same baskets, the same loaves. But under his command, they filed out, their torches vanishing one by one into the night. The man lingered a moment longer, his voice low and venomous. "You will pay for this. Rome does not forget, and neither do I." Then he swept out, the door slamming behind him. The room fell into stunned silence. Flour floated in the air like dust. Loaves lay broken on the ground, baskets overturned, the bakery in ruins. Demas collapsed into a chair, shaking. The believers slowly straightened, their fear mingling with relief. Tryphena and Tryphosa stood together, shoulders touching, their faces pale but unbowed. Tryphena finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "He is right about one thing. Rome does not forget, but neither does God." Tryphosa nodded, her eyes fierce. "And God's memory is stronger." Phoebe placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Tonight, you stood between fear and faith. Paul's words will live because you did not bend." Tertius bent to gather the scattered loaves, his voice heavy with awe. He thought the letter was paper. He did not see it as already written here. He tapped his chest. "In hearts." The sisters exchanged a weary smile. The bakery was broken, but their courage was not. The man in the cloak would return again, perhaps with more soldiers, perhaps with harsher threats. But Paul's letter was already scattered like seeds on the wind, and no empire could silence what had already taken root. Still, as the night deepened, a single thought lingered in the sisters' minds. How far would Rome go to crush them, and how much more would be asked of them before this struggle ended? Days passed after the raid, but peace did not return. The bakery walls still bore the marks of soldiers' hands, flour ground into the cracks, baskets splintered, shelves overturned. Yet every dawn, Tryphena and Tryphosa lit the ovens, kneaded the dough, and opened the doors. To the passerby, they looked like ordinary bakers once again. To the believers of Rome, they were guardians of the word, and to the man in the cloak, they were unfinished business. Rumors grew louder through the city. The sisters' names were whispered in the markets, not only by the church, but even by strangers who marveled at their defiance. "Two women," someone said in a tavern. "They stood against soldiers and did not break." "Two sisters," another replied, "who feed widows with bread and words stronger than chains." These whispers reached the ears of Rome's officials. Soon the sisters were summoned to stand before the magistrate. The believers begged them not to go. "They will condemn you," the elder warned. "They will demand names, and if you refuse, they will punish you publicly." But Tryphena shook her head, her voice steady. "If we hide, they will hunt others. If we stand, perhaps they will see the truth. We cannot let the church suffer in our place." Tryphosa placed her hand on her sister's arm. "Then we stand together. Always together." The day of the summons arrived. The sisters walked through the crowded forum, their plain tunics dusty from the street, their heads held high. Soldiers flanked them, and behind them trailed curious onlookers eager to see what would happen to the women who defied Rome. The magistrate sat on a raised platform, his robes bright, his face stern. Beside him, in the shadows, stood the man in the cloak, his eyes gleaming with triumph. The magistrate's voice rang out, deep and commanding. "You are Tryphena and Tryphosa, sisters of Rome, accused of spreading writings that speak of another king, accused of gathering citizens in secret, accused of defying the peace of Caesar. What say you?" Tryphena stepped forward first, her voice clear enough to carry through the forum. "We are bakers. We rise before dawn to knead dough, to feed the hungry, to care for the weak. If this is rebellion, then Rome has outlawed mercy." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The magistrate raised his hand for silence. "And the writings? Do you deny that Paul's letters have passed through your hands?" Tryphosa lifted her chin. We do not deny it, but you misunderstand. These writings do not raise swords, they raise hope. They do not tear down Caesar's walls, they build up broken hearts. Rome fears what it does not understand. The man in the cloak stepped forward, his voice sharp. Do not be fooled, noble magistrate. These women are dangerous. They carry words that spread like fire, words that claim a kingdom beyond Caesar's reach. If you let them live, Rome itself will burn. The magistrate studied the sisters for a long moment. His gaze was heavy, his authority absolute. You are guilty, he declared at last, his tone like iron, but Rome shows mercy to those who bend. Speak the names of those who meet with you, and your lives will be spared. Refuse, and you will pay the price. The crowd hushed. All eyes turned to the sisters. Tryphena looked at Tryphosa, and in her sister's steady eyes she saw the answer they had always carried. Tryphosa spoke first, her voice unwavering. We cannot give you what you ask. Our brothers and sisters are not ours to betray. Tryphena added, and our lives are not ours to keep. They belong to the Lord who called us. The man in the cloak shouted, furious, They mock you, magistrate! They defy Rome openly. Crush them now before the fire spreads. But the magistrate raised his hand again, silencing him. He leaned forward, his eyes still locked on the sisters. For a moment his expression softened, whether from respect or unease, no one could say. At last, he spoke. You will not be executed today, but know this. Rome watches you. One more step against Caesar, and mercy will not return. He struck his staff on the platform. Release them! Gasps filled the forum. The man in the cloak looked as though he had been struck himself, his mouth open in fury, but the soldiers obeyed, stepping aside. The sisters walked free, their heads unbowed, their steps steady though their hearts raced. Back at the bakery, the believers gathered around them in awe. Demas clung to Tryphosa's arm, his voice trembling. You didn't bend. You didn't give them anything. Tryphena knelt down, looking him in the eye. We gave them the only thing we have, the truth. The elder spoke softly, his eyes wet. Paul will hear of this. He will know that in Rome, two sisters stood firm. He greeted you as women who worked hard in the Lord. Today, you proved him right. That night, in the quiet of the bakery, the sisters sat together by the dying embers of the oven. Tryphosa leaned against her sister, her voice weary but filled with wonder. Do you think we've done enough? Tryphena smiled faintly. Faithfulness is never measured in enough. It is measured in obedience. And we were obedient today. The city outside still rumbled with the noise of Rome, soldiers marching, merchants shouting, rumors spreading. But in that small bakery, hidden and ordinary, the kingdom of God had advanced, not by swords, not by wealth, not by power, but by the steady hands of two women who would not bend. Years later, when Paul's letter to the Romans was read in homes and catacombs, when his words traveled farther than the empire itself, believers would pause at the greeting near the end. Greet Tryphena and Tryphosa, those women who work hard in the Lord. And they would remember not only the names, but the story of two sisters, bakers by trade, who fed both bodies and souls, who faced Rome's fury and did not bow, who proved that greatness is not found in titles or thrones, but in quiet, steady faith. And so, their legacy lived. Not in marble statues or Roman records, but in the hearts of those who heard their story and dared to follow their example. For in the end, Rome's power faded, but the word they carried endured forever.